The energy inside the conference hall was electric. Cameras flashed, the crowd roared, and reporters scrambled to catch every word as former President Donald Trump took the stage for a surprise press conference in Florida. No teleprompter. No filters. Just Trump, his infamous red tie, and a message he claimed would shake the foundation of the court system. For too long, he began, voice booming, we've watched certain people in black robes forget who they serve. And today, I'm naming names. Gasps rippled through the room. Everyone knew who he meant, but no one expected him to actually say it. Then came the name. John Roberts. The Chief Justice of the United States. The room went still. Even the air seemed to pause. Trump leaned into the podium, eyes narrowed. He's compromised. He's spineless. And worst of all, he thinks the American people won't notice. The press flinched, but Trump wasn't finished. He raised a hand to silence the murmuring. What he did with that last decision wasn't neutrality. It was betrayal. The crowd braced for more. Trump pointed his finger like a dagger at the back of the room, toward the camera. And I'll tell you something right now. One line. That's all I need. He stepped back from the mic, paused, and delivered it cold. He's done. Within minutes of Trump's explosive statement, the news cycle went into overdrive. Cable networks interrupted regular programming. Social media exploded. Pundits scrambled to interpret the implications. Was it a political stunt? A warning? Or something more? Behind the scenes in D.C., the ripple effect was immediate, and brutal. Chief Justice John Roberts was reportedly blindsided. According to a senior court aide who spoke anonymously, Roberts had received no advance notice, no briefing, not even a hint. He was in chambers reviewing an upcoming decision when the message popped up on his phone, Trump just said your name, and it wasn't pretty. Meanwhile, on Capitol Hill, Republican senators found themselves caught in the crossfire. Some tried to downplay the attack, urging calm. Others leaned in. Roberts has made questionable calls, one senator told Fox News off the record. Maybe it's time someone finally said it out loud. In private circles, Democrats laughed, nervously. They knew better than to celebrate. Trump's influence hadn't faded, if anything, it had sharpened. And when he set his sights on someone, it wasn't random. As the sun set over D.C., one message became clear, Trump wasn't bluffing. Inside Mar-a-Lago, Trump was reviewing a folder. Thick. Confidential. Aides whispered about the Roberts file. Tomorrow, Trump said quietly to his inner circle, I'm dropping the second blow. Let's see if he's still standing after that. The next morning, just as D.C. was trying to catch its breath, Trump delivered. He posted a 3-minute video on Truth Social, seated in front of an American flag, looking straight into the camera with the intensity of a man on a mission. No one wants to say it, so I will, he began. We have a Supreme Court Chief Justice who's been playing both sides, and America deserves to know why. Then he held it up, a single document. This memo, Trump said, isn't classified. It's public record. But no one bothered to read it, until now. The screen flashed an excerpt from a 2015 internal court ethics complaint. Buried in bureaucratic language was a concerning detail. Roberts had once intervened in a lower court dispute involving a corporation, one that just so happened to be linked to a lobbying firm his sister worked for. It had never made headlines. But now, in Trump's hands, it became fuel. Conflict of interest. You tell me, Trump said flatly. And ask yourself this, why wasn't this disclosed during the major healthcare ruling? Why did Roberts twist the law back then to save a policy nobody wanted? He let the silence hang before finishing, this isn't personal. It's about trust. And when you lose the trust of the American people, you're done. The post racked up millions of views in under an hour. By noon, Senate aides were fielding calls. Judiciary Committee members were holding emergency Zooms. And the White House? Silent. But inside the Supreme Court building, word was Roberts had locked his door, and wasn't taking calls. Inside the Supreme Court, the mood was somber. Chief Justice John Roberts stood alone in his private chambers, staring at the memo now plastered across every major media outlet. The walls felt like they were closing in. He wasn't used to this kind of heat, public political combat. Especially not from Trump. But Trump had forced his hand. Roberts met with his clerks behind closed doors. "This will pass," one of them offered, cautiously. "We can issue a statement. Clarify the timeline, note the ethics board dismissed the complaint." Roberts held up a hand. "No press release," he said quietly. "Not yet." He knew something no one else did: the 2015 memo wasn't the real threat. It was the other thing. The file only a few people in D.C. had seen. The file that Trump, if he really had it, could ruin him with. Back at Mar-a-Lago, Trump met with two former intelligence officials. One of them slid a sealed manila envelope across the table. "This one's not public," the man said. "But it will be. Your people will know when." Trump flipped it open, scanned the first page, and smirked. Well. I always said Roberts wasn't who he pretended to be." He turned to his aide and spoke just above a whisper. "If this drops, he won't just be done, he'll disappear." The following morning, an anonymous tip hit the inboxes of 3 investigative journalists, each from a different network. No name, no sender. Just a subject line: "Follow the foundation." It's always the money. Attached was a single scan document, an old grant application from 2007, tied to a non-profit legal foundation that Roberts had quietly helped fund during his early years on the bench. The money trail was murky, but the recipients? Alarming. One of them had direct connections to a foreign lobbying group now under federal investigation. It wasn't illegal. Not quite. But it reeked of conflict. And it painted a picture of a man whose public image, stable, impartial, and untouched, might have always been an illusion. Trump knew the press would sniff it out within 48 hours. But he didn't wait. At a veterans' town hall in Pennsylvania that evening, Trump went off script. He paced the stage, then suddenly stopped mid-sentence. "You know what I don't like," he said, eyes blazing. "People in power pretending to be neutral, when they've got backroom deals with folks who shouldn't even be in this country." The crowd leaned in. Trump pulled a folded sheet from his inner jacket. "This right here proves John Roberts isn't clean. Never was." The crowd erupted. Phones shot up. The internet lit like wildfire. That night, Roberts' office issued a rare public denial: Chief Justice Roberts has never accepted funding, compensation, or favors in violation of judicial ethics. But it was too late. The story had shifted. The perception had changed. And Trump, alone at Mar-a-Lago, smiled as he watched the broadcast. He's wobbling. One more push, and he falls. By Monday morning, D.C. was on edge. Cable news anchors danced around the same question: what else does Trump have? And more importantly, why was Roberts silent? Inside Mar-a-Lago, Trump wasn't pacing. He was planning. On a mahogany desk in the study sat the final file, thick, annotated, and unredacted. Pages of flight logs, Foundation wire transfers, and discreet photos from high-end retreats no judge should have ever attended. The file had a name on it. A code name whispered in private for years among Beltway elites: June Circle. Trump was about to make it public. "I want it live," he told his media team. "Not a post. Not a leak. Live. One camera. No interruptions." His aide hesitated. "Sir, once this goes out, there's no walking it back. They'll come for you." Trump didn't blink. "They already are." Meanwhile, in D.C., the Supreme Court's press office was in chaos. Rumors swirled that Roberts had been advised by close legal allies to step down temporarily, for the integrity of the court. He refused. But even his allies were wavering. That afternoon, at precisely 3 p.m. Eastern, Trump stepped in front of a camera surrounded by veterans and business leaders. No podium. Just a chair, the file in hand, and a calm, almost surgical tone. "This," he said, holding up the first page, "is what they didn't want you to see." He laid it all out. Names. Dates. Transfers. Meetings. Robert's signature, on a document tied to a luxury legal retreat funded by an overseas firm with known intelligence links. "I'm not accusing," Trump said. "I'm just asking, how is this justice?" The clip hit 10 million views in an hour. By nightfall, the hashtag Roberts resign was trending worldwide. Inside the court, Roberts sat in silence. The one man who never cracked, now staring down a wave he couldn't control. And Trump? He simply walked off camera, leaving the country stunned. The morning after Trump's exposé, a hush fell over the marble halls of the Supreme Court. Behind the stately columns and closed doors, the pressure had turned inward, and brutal. For the first time in over a decade, fellow justices requested a closed-door emergency session. Not to discuss a case, but to confront their own chief. Justice Clarence Thomas, once silent on internal matters, reportedly spoke first. "John, this isn't just noise anymore. It's tearing the court apart." Justice Sotomayor, from the opposite ideological end, echoed it. "This isn't about Trump. It's about us. And the public doesn't believe in us right now." Roberts sat stiff, fingers laced, the file now infamously dubbed the June Circle papers open before him. "I've done nothing illegal," he said. "And I will not be threatened out of my position." But his voice lacked its usual iron. Even the clerks noticed. Meanwhile, across the country, lawmakers were emboldened. A fringe coalition of both parties began drafting a call for Roberts to recuse himself from upcoming high-profile decisions. A few even floated the word impeachment, rare, unprecedented, but no longer unthinkable. That night, Trump posted again. "They wanted him untouchable. I made him answerable. One man, one file, one truth." Then he added, "And Roberts won't be the last." The caption was paired with a photo. A closed manila folder. On it, Target 2, the architect. The internet exploded. Now the question wasn't if Roberts would fall. It was who was next. 3 days after Trump's file drop, the Supreme Court was in free fall, not legally, but institutionally. Public confidence had plummeted. Protesters gathered outside the court in numbers not seen since landmark rulings. But this time, they weren't holding signs about laws, they were holding signs with John Roberts' name. Inside the building, tension was at a boil. A leaked transcript of the emergency judicial meeting found its way to a major outlet. One quote stood out, attributed to Justice Elena Kagan: "If he stays, we all burn. If he steps down, at least we save the court." The pressure was no longer just political, it was historical. At the same time, Trump's next move loomed. In a fiery appearance on a late-night conservative webcast, he dropped another breadcrumb: Roberts was just the face. But the architect of the game? He's next. And he knows who he is. Speculation erupted. Was it a senator? A donor? A judge? A former cabinet member? But Trump gave a clue, subtle, sharp. "I'll say this, when you stack the court, write the script, and pull the strings, eventually someone follows that string right to you." The phrase, "the architect," began trending across all platforms. Every outlet ran their own guess. But deep in a basement office of the Capitol, one man already knew the storm was headed his way. He turned off the TV, lit a cigarette with a trembling hand, and whispered to no one in particular, "He's coming for me." By sunrise, the political world was holding its breath. Every insider, strategist, and lobbyist knew the term, the architect, wasn't just dramatic, it was dangerous. Whoever it was, they weren't just connected to Roberts, they had built the system he operated in. Then, Trump made his move. In a highly anticipated rally in Georgia, he took the stage to thunderous cheers. But this time, the energy was different. It wasn't about chants or slogans. It was about exposure. He pulled a thick binder from the podium and opened it slowly. "You want to know who built the game?" he asked. "You want to know who told Roberts what to say, where to stand, and who to protect?" He held up a photo. Leonard Leo. The crowd hushed. The name didn't ring bells for everyone, but the political elite understood instantly, the co-chair of the Federalist Society. The man credited with shaping the conservative judicial pipeline for decades. The quiet strategist behind multiple Supreme Court nominations. Trump wasn't just accusing a judge. He was calling out the kingmaker. "He's not on the bench. He's behind it," Trump continued. "He's the one who whispered in ears, moved the money, picked the names, and if Roberts is compromised, Leo made him that way." The screen behind Trump lit up with flowcharts. Donations. Private meetings. Think tank retreats. Judicial vetting documents. Trump turned back to the crowd. "You were told this was democracy. But it was design. And the man who drew the blueprints, he's next." DC froze. For the first time, even Trump's enemies weren't sure how to respond. Because this wasn't about a single justice anymore. This was about the entire machine. The shockwaves from Trump's declaration sent Washington into full crisis mode. Leonard Leo, a man once content to remain in the shadows, suddenly found his name splashed across front pages. Think pieces, exposés, and old conference footage were dissected frame by frame. Reporters descended on his known associates. Subpoena whispers followed. In conservative legal circles, there was panic. Federalist Society members began distancing themselves quietly, scrubbing photos, deleting tweets, and canceling speaking appearances. A leak from within one judicial nonprofit exposed emails linking Leo's network to strategic case placements, documents suggesting certain lawsuits were intentionally steered toward judges more likely to favor institutional preservation. It was subtle language, but damning in the court of public opinion. And Trump? He wasn't done. In a new campaign-style video posted at midnight, Trump spoke over a cinematic drone shot of the Capitol. They thought they could pick presidents by picking judges. But now the judges are on trial. And so is the man who placed them. He paused, then added, "This isn't about party. This is about power, stolen, manipulated, and engineered." The video ended with 4 words that shook the political establishment: "The system is next." Calls flooded into the DOJ. Senators whispered about emergency oversight hearings. Some suggested Trump had gone too far. Others feared he hadn't gone far enough. But inside Mar-a-Lago, Trump leaned back in his chair as an aide whispered, "Sir, Leo's team is lawyering up." Trump grinned without looking away from the screen. Then they know it's real. For days, Leonard Leo had remained silent. No interviews. No statements. Just an eerie quiet as the narrative built around him like a cage. But late Thursday evening, that changed. From a discreet studio in Virginia, Leo released a pre-recorded video, polished, scripted, and carefully worded. He sat behind a desk with a U.S. flag subtly blurred in the background. "I have spent my life defending the Constitution," he began, his voice steady. "I have never sought power, only principles." He denied any illegal coordination, dismissed Trump's claims as reckless political theater, and suggested that the former president was weaponizing public distrust for personal gain. But the tone was off. Too calculated. Too defensive. And the damage had already metastasized. Moments after Leo's video dropped, Trump fired back, instantly. He didn't deny the retreats. He didn't deny the donations. He didn't deny writing the list. Then he dropped the photo. A grainy image, Leo at a private mountain estate, seated at a dinner table with Roberts, a known lobbyist, and 2 unnamed donors. The metadata? 2 weeks before Roberts ruled in favor of a controversial corporate immunity case. Trump captioned it with 4 simple words, "Now explain this dinner." The photo went viral in seconds. Suddenly, Leo's video felt like a whimper. And inside think tanks and legal coalitions nationwide, phones went silent. The orchestrator was now the exposed. By morning, several sitting federal judges released a joint letter calling for a full investigation into external influence on judicial neutrality. It was the first time in modern history that federal judges had turned on the man who shaped them. And Trump? He was already preparing the endgame. It all came down to one final broadcast. Promoted for days as "the truth they can't censor," Trump's closing statement was streamed live across every major platform. No stage. No rally. Just Trump, sitting in a dimly lit room, the same one where the first file on Roberts was opened. He spoke directly, slowly. This wasn't about John Roberts. Or Leonard Leo. It was about a system, built to look neutral, but designed to obey. Then, he reached under the table and pulled out a final folder. Thinner than the others. But deadlier. Inside were sworn depositions, former clerks, non-profit employees, even one retired federal judge, all confirming the same thing: judicial influence wasn't a conspiracy. It was a strategy. Some rulings had been discussed before cases were even accepted. Donor pressure. Social ties. Conference calls that blurred legal ethics. None of it criminal on its face. But all of it corrupt. Trump didn't yell. He didn't gloat. He let the documents speak. They thought they'd never be seen. But now we see them. Within an hour, the fallout was historic. John Roberts announced a temporary leave from the court pending a full ethics review, something that had never happened in U.S. history. Leonard Leo resigned from 3 boards he had chaired for decades. The Senate Judiciary Committee launched a bipartisan task force to investigate judicial influence networks. Law schools across the country paused Federalist Society funding. And America watched, stunned. For Trump, it wasn't just vindication. It was legacy. He had pulled back the curtain, and shown the country who had been standing behind it all along. In his closing words, he simply said, "You were told to trust them. I told you to watch them. Now you know why." The screen faded to black.